I wanted to briefly welcome you all, but more importantly, thank you. Thank you to our lead sponsors. Many of you are here. I think Kenny, right there with William Ravis, thank you. With Kravitz, thank you. And thank you for all of your support of this week and all of our endeavors. It allows us to continue our programming throughout the year. So you are in store for a delightful presentation. Kelly Williams will be giving Corey a proper introduction. I want to point out that we still have an online auction. It closes at noon. There is a billboard out front that highlights all the items that are available, so please bid. It's working on my phone just fine. And there is a delightful pop-up by Poppy Caravan at the 1800 House. So enjoy this, make the most of the day, and enjoy this weather. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Olivia. Corey, why don't you come on up? Come join me. I'm very excited for this. I had to arm wrestle Chessie Breen because Chessie was supposed to do this, but I won. So I am thrilled to be here. I'm thrilled to have Corey here. Corey knows I've been stalking him for like 4 years trying to get him here. And although we are going to give Corey a proper introduction, we're kind of going to start in the middle. And then we'll work our way back to the introduction. I thought maybe I would start with, first of all, I mean, you all know him, and you're going to see some of these images and realize you know him, even though you didn't know him. But I want to start where I sort of met him. I didn't meet him in person, but I met him just from a design perspective. And start with our very first slide. So, this was the Kips Showhouse in 2019. Mm-hmm. Yes. And for those of you who've been fortunate enough to attend the Kips Showhouse, it is extraordinary. And this year in particular, they had secured this unbelievable mansion that was in many ways kind of untouched, right? I mean, it was untouched is a kind way of saying dilapidated. And there were many blockbuster kind of showstopper rooms, but for me, this was the showstopper. I walked in there and I just didn't want to leave. And I kept looking around, and then I looked at the little card and saw that it was called the Ladies' Library. Mm-hmm. And the designer was Corey Damen Jenkins, who I already knew, and then I was more in love with. But this room I thought was really special and extraordinary. So Corey, tell us why you called it the Ladies' Library.
Well, I think that when the house was originally built in the late 1920s, it was actually designated on the architectural plans as the gentleman's study. And at that time, women did not even have the right to vote. And so we've come a long way since then. And as a huge supporter of women's rights and advancing equality for women, I thought that this needed to be rebranded as the Ladies' Library. Because I think that women are the cradle of civilization. Nothing moves on this planet without women. And so why not give them a command center of their own? And I design that for my clients often. We'll have a gentleman's study, but then I also want to make sure that the lady of the house also has a command center of her own. So this was like the prototype for that type of concept.
Well, so I love that because, of course, when you design for a show house, you don't have a client. Right. So you have to kind of create the client. So what was the story that you created? Was really that's the story?
Yeah, it was really about, so obviously it was a library. So you can only do so much when you have bookshelves encasing the entire room. So we had to keep it that way. But the question was, do you go for a dark, stained, moody, Ralph Lauren styled, study, which would be the traditional and the expected thing to do? Or do you put a spooky wall covering on the ceiling and paint the walls, a blush champagne color and lacquer them instead? And that was the route that, I chose to go. And when you're doing Kips Bay, they only give you 6 weeks, literally, to put together the entire space. From the time you get the room assignment to pencils down, photography, and grand opening, it's 6 weeks. So you are begging and borrowing from people. It's about whatever's available, what's on the showroom floor. Can I get it overnighted? And it's like putting everything into a mixer, like a blender, and just pushing, going, you hope to God that it tastes good when everyone arrives. So I didn't know how this room was going to turn out. I mean, I knew in my head I had an idea, obviously, but we were off to the races. And so Kravit was a huge supporter in helping us put this together. And it just took shape. And I was just blown away. It's been Pinterested and Instagrammed hundreds of thousands of times according to the metrics. I did not know that was going to happen, but I'm really glad that it struck a chord.
Mm-hmm. Well, so talk about taking shape. This room had a lot of shapes in it, right? Because it's a rectangular room, but it has the bay window. And throughout this room, I think one of the reasons it feels so good is you use these ellipses and you use these curved shapes. So talk about the challenges in designing a room that's shaped this way.
Well, I really appreciate that question, Kelly, because I think that good design is governed by a system of rules, a system of principles, and rules can be bent, they can be broken, but principles should govern everything that we do when it comes to interior design. And so I wanted to kind of celebrate the bones of the space. As you mentioned, it was in a very dilapidated position when I received it. So we had to do a lot of refurbishment to get it to this level. There was literally a hole about 4 feet ground in one of the walls. And I'm like, what happened here? So we had to do a lot of refurbishment to get it to where it is now. But it had these great bay windows. We wanted to celebrate the curvature of them by this sofa, which is directly across from the windows, bringing that same circular geometric energy across the room. And, the chandelier, which is another antique piece, also has the curvature. So I like juxtaposing round curves against these more straight lines. And I think that makes it very interesting for the viewer.
And very feminine.
We
very
like sexy.
Girls with curves.
Yes. Yep.
So the other thing that I found fascinating about this room, only because I would not normally expect to like it, is, I have a little bit of trauma from my childhood because my mother always used to dress me in plaid pinafores, and I just hated plaid. And then these fabulous drapes are plaid.
Yes.
And so talk about using that in a ladies' library.
So almost all of my clients who are women love masculine prints. It's a bit of a stereotype that people think that, well, men love stripes and women love, flowers. But men love floral patterns. Women love houndstooth and stripes and plaid. And so I like doing projects that kind of challenge those stereotypical thinking patterns. And with these drapes, Valentino had a fabulous show in Paris the year prior. And he had a series of these peplum skirts. And I really like looking at fashion to kind of influence what I do with interior design. So I thought, why not bring that kind of peplum skirt motif forward with these window treatments, the top being the bodice, if you will, and then the passementerie across the bottom being the belt, and then the plaid being the gown that kind of drapes and cascades down the woman's body. And we had 17-foot ceilings, so I really want to kind of play that up with that.
Well, it's fantastic. And speaking of the ceiling, again, it's a ladies' library. Floral is the expected, but as you said, you picked a spooky floral.
Yes.
So talk about using that. It's kind of one of these dark fantasies on the ceiling.
So my staff hated this wall covering. They absolutely despised it. I have an all-female team, and they cornered me in the office in my suite, and they were like, "We hate this wall covering. What are you thinking?" And I says, "No, I think it's really inspired. It's dark and it's spooky, but I think it's going to really be a wow factor on the ceiling." And, I asked for a vote, and I got, voted out. But as the president and chief executive officer, I have the chief veto power. So I said, we're doing this. And because on the small sample, it's a Lee Joffa wall covering. On the sample, it's mostly black with just a little bit of persimmon, a little bit of green. And as a designer, our job is to look at it not just from this small sample standpoint, but how it's splashed on a large, plane, like a ceiling. And so I knew it was going to be a hit. I'm glad that my team came around to support me with it because we paired it with these beautiful champagne colored walls. And it's like inspired by the ancient hanging gardens of Babylon, which used to be one of the world's wonders. And I wanted to bring that botanical flair into the space.
Well, it was definitely unexpected, but I'm glad you overruled.
Yes.
As a CEO, I'm glad
Sometimes
you did that.
I cave.
The last thing I want to talk about is the art wall, and particularly that that French sort of empire, the table with the French inspired ghost chair.
Yeah.
I love that mix because you've got it's clearly, it's of the style, but you mixed it up with something different. So talk about that.
Yeah. Well, again, the idea was to give the lady a place to work, to run her business, to run her household. And so with all the modernity we had coursing through the space with the Kagan style sofa and of course the coffee table, we wanted to, of course, give that wink and that nod back to traditionalism because I am a maximalist traditionalist. And so that desk came courtesy of Theodore Alexander. The ghost chair, acrylic chair there was by Global Views, and they were another great partner for us. And the idea was to keep pushing the narratives as far as breaking some rules and applying principles. So the chair doesn't have to be wood; it can be something else. But the desk can certainly be traditional and still uphold the rule of classicism. So it was fun.
Well, I love this room. I think it will definitely stand the test of time. But what do you do when you have, given that this is your sensibility, what do you do when you have a client who wants it all white? So let's go to the next slide.
Right. So with this project, we had a husband and wife team who were very disparate in their views on color.
Well, that rarely happens. There are rarely spouses who don't agree.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. No. Patty really wanted color. She loves jewel tones, sapphire blue and emerald green. She loves all those things. And Matthew was like, no, I really don't want that at all. I really want neutrality everywhere. I want more mid-century modern. And so being a designer calls for diplomacy. We have to be diplomats and really sometimes be the deal breaker or the tiebreaker, if you will, sometimes between a husband and wife or two spouses, two partners. And so when we did this project, we built this house from the ground up, Kelly, and we decided, okay, we're going to have lots of light, lots of big windows. So, the husband would get the brightness that he's asking for. How can we bring in the wife's vision? And so I said, we're going to do, this jolt of emerald green on this velvet sofa and touches of it on pillows and things of that nature. And at first the husband kind of kvetched at that. He was like, emerald greens. I said, no, you've got the white walls, right? And we're doing beige on the ceiling. So you've got like 75% of the color vernacular in this space. So you're good. It's Patty's turn, So
let me ask you this:
for that.
do you ever sneak things in, like when they're out of town, and say, "All right, I'm going to go put some color, put a pink chair in, and then just see how they react to it"?
I don't.
No,
I really don't. I really try to be as transparent with my clients as possible because I don't want to be stuck with any inventory. So, I don't want people saying, well, I really don't want that. So you take it back and now I have, two pink chairs that I don't know what to do with, So I really try to be as transparent as possible in advance. It makes for easy customer service.
I get it. Well, this was well done. Hopefully she's happy. And was she happy?
Oh, thrilled. It got the
was.
front cover of House Beautiful magazine. Funny story about that. I was in the airport at LaGuardia Airport in New York City, catching my flight back to Michigan. And I did not know I had gotten the front cover. And Joe Sauce, the editor-in-chief there, had a package for social media assets and things and an announcement ready to go. But the magazine shipped 2 weeks early, and LaGuardia and another outlet were the only ones to get this magazine 2 weeks early. So I saw it on the newsstand and
Wow.
had no idea. And so I was leaving a voicemail message, a video message for a friend of mine, and I did drop a few F-bombs and S words in pure shock. I was like, holy, let me call you back. I got the front cover of House Beautiful. And so this was greeting me when I first walked into the LaGuardia.
Oh, wonderful. That's great. What a great story.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, let's go to the next slide because I love the compromise you made in this kitchen. And this to me is very unexpected. You don't often see white cabinetry mixed with the wood in the way you did this. But I'd love to hear, first of all, what did the spouses, what was the conversation going on here? And then how did you execute on that?
Well, this was one space, Kelly, where the husband and wife were pretty congruent with this particular space. They were very aligned here with what they wanted. The wife really did want clean lines. We did want to mix and match the cabinetry with the white oak on top. The architectural inset on the top cabinetry is a nod to traditionalism, but then the more clean lines of the cabinetry on the lowers with the very transitional hardware again speaks to the modernity that the husband really loved. The only thing here that was probably the most controversial for the couple was the stone. This was a quartz that we saw in slabs at a local quartz place, stone place, and the husband took to it right away. He was like, "It looks like graffiti. It's so cool." And the wife, again, being a more traditionalist, more conservative, she was like, "I really don't know." But she came along with it after I drew it out for her. I sketched it out to show her what the scale of the stone's movement would look like in the kitchen. And she loved it. And this is another space that's been, heavily shared. We don't do it for that, but we always love it when it does resonate with people. Yeah, it's you can't really see it probably in the photos, but there is a little strip of white oak kind of going through as a suspender across the top of the island in two places. And people think that was done for fashion or for a stylish, reason, but it really wasn't. It was the width of the slabs. We couldn't make it go all the way around. So I pulled a little bit of wood off the countertop or off the upper cabinetry and ran it through at the seams.
Oh, I
for a
see
little
it.
extra.
I see it now. That's clever.
Right there. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really clever. And so is this room open to the other rooms that we saw?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
So talk about that. Are you over open floor plans or kind of what's your thinking on that? Because that's always been a controversial subject.
I think coming out of this pandemic, people are really looking more towards individual rooms again versus the big open floor plan. But I think both have their pluses and their minuses. This is a young family, so they want to be together as much as possible. They have two young girls, and they really want to make sure they can keep an eye on them at all times and have space to kind of spread out and cook and whatnot. So I can go either way. It just depends upon what the space is and how can we compartmentalize it in a way that makes sense for the family. It's never about what I really want. It's really about what the clients are looking to achieve. So
great. Well, let's go to the next slide. And this is part of the same house, which you might not guess given what those other rooms look like, but talk about what you did here.
So again, thinking about diplomacy. So the husband won with the living room with the, mostly neutral space, the white walls and the gray ceilings. This was the wife's space. I said to each of them, okay, you each get to pick a room where you want your vision to play up more. And then the other room's we're going to play it down, make it less. So we took the blue and the emerald green from the sofa in the living room and really pumped it up in this dining room because she loves to entertain and to have friends over. So we have a hide on the ceiling, not a real hide. I didn't kill anything to make this room possible. Nothing died in this process. But we have a hide on the ceiling. And then we have these very clean chairs around the dining room table with a fun Lijofa floral velvet on the host and hostess chairs. And then we wrapped the walls in this really understated grass cloth, very nubby, it has a lot of texture to it. And again, keeping in line with the cleanliness, but a bit more color. And my good friend Thomas O'Brien, this chandelier was from his collection for, I think, visual comfort. This was brand new at the time, which is why I like going to High Point Market to give my clients things before everyone else sees it. And the chandelier was a bit of a pain to hang, but it looks like this sculptural piece in the dining room.
It does. It's great. And so one of the things that I think we notice in this house is there's not a lot of artwork. The sculpture, and tell everybody what it's called.
It's a bust. It's called flower. It's called Butterflies for Brains. Literally, that's the name of the SKU. It's butterflies for brains. So,
but did this couple, were they not collectors? Did they just want nothing kind of interrupting their eye in the house?
They had some pieces of art, but they came from a home that was, much smaller than this house. They had the house next door, and then this property came up for sale. And so they bought the property next door. We tore the house down and built this new house on the new property. So when you're going from, say, 1,700 square feet to 6,000 square feet plus, you just don't have enough square footage to, enough stuff to fill that square footage. It's like having 8 slices of toast and only so much peanut butter and jelly. You can only spread it so far. And so we had to get a lot more. So in this case, I got to curate some things for them.
Good for you. All right, let's go to the next image. So I love this project in particular. We'll spend some time here. But in part, since you were coming here to talk at Nantucket by Design, I like this because this is not a house in New England, but it has a lot of classical and traditional elements.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about how did you play up those elements? How did you retain them? And then what are some of the things you did to spice it up?
So this couple came to me after seeing a spread that we had in Traditional Home in 2015. And lovely couple, they live in New Canaan, Connecticut. And they had this home that they had built 25 years earlier, had great American colonial revival details as far as the architectural story is concerned. And they wanted to retain all of that. And she had interviewed a few different designers to do this project for the renovation aspect of it. And she had purchased what I call very well. She bought well. She got nice pieces of furniture, great frames, Baker pieces, antiques, vintage pieces from all around the world. And she really did not want to part with them. And every one of the designers that she had interviewed had told her, I want everything gone. I want a completely clean, palette. And when she brought me in, I was like, well, I really love everything you have here. Let's just move things around and just kind of, freshen things up. So we made a lot of changes. We dipped the coffee table, for example, in white lacquer. We painted the doors this amethyst purple, this lacquer purple. And that was, I think, a bit bold. The couple was in their early 70s, and they were like, look, we only have one life to live. Let's do it. Let's just push the boundaries and go for it. And so we lacquered the doors, and it was a lot of fun to do that. But we ended up recovering 37 pieces of furniture.
Wow.
Yeah, and just moved things around. We bought very few new pieces. The 2 chairs in the foreground and the background there were new finds. Those were two pieces that we got from Robert Allen. But everything else they already owned. I just rearranged everything, that's why I call my book Design Remix, just remixing the space, giving it a fresh new take. The pieces of art, they had a lot of art, some locked away in the attic. And so I brought these pieces down for the stairwell, and each frame has a pick light attached to the frame. So it was a bit of a hair-raising experience with the electrician, figuring out the geometry and the scale of the electrical to have everything hardwired as far as the circuitry for the pick lights. But when it's turned on at light, it's just magical. Just the stairwell just lit up with all these picture frames. And I enjoy doing projects like that, where you get to kind of reuse what the client has. It makes it it's an easier sell for the client when you're just celebrating and cherishing that which they've already invested in versus buying everything new.
Well, and it's also a more sustainable way to approach design, right?
Right.
That meant a lot of things didn't end up in a landfill.
That's right. That's right. I do that a lot.
So, if you were just to verbally describe this and say, well, it's a very traditional house, and so we painted the walls, seafoam green and lacquered the doors amethyst, people would be like, what?
I know.
But living in a house that was built in 1795, I can tell you, I have original robin's egg blue, dry paint on floors, and my painter said, oh, you want to get rid of that, right? I'm like, absolutely not, because people think colonials lived without color, but of course we know, if you see Monticello and other houses, that there were very bright, very vivid colors used, because otherwise the interiors were very dark and close.
Mhm.
So I love that you did that. And I think just looking at the, how you pulled the purple and the blue throughout, is it something that you did throughout the house? Did you repeat the color scheme?
On the first floor, especially, we did. The second story, we went a slightly different direction. The foyer, we kept the same palette all the way up. But the principal bedroom, we did do a bit more blue, a bit more neutrality. But the amethyst, that purple, we kind of kept to the first floor only.
So I want to go back to your point about, talking to clients who have cherished pieces that they want to use. What if the cherished piece is like a moth-eaten Barca lounger and you're like, hell no, we are not. How do you diplomatically convince a client that piece they think they can't live without, they can actually live without?
So I have a couple of different ways I approach that. I do try to negotiate with the client and help them understand this piece has seen better days. It's done. It's okay. We can let it go. But there are times when the client will, push back and say, no, I really want to keep this. And it's not my house, right? So it's like delivering a baby. I said this in House Beautiful. Doing good design is like delivering a baby. It needs to look like you as the parent because it's going home with you. So at the end of the day, if we photograph the house, I just won't have that moth-eaten piece in the picture. That's all. Just take it out and then put it back when you're done with the photo shoot.
Got it. It always makes me think of that show Frasier, which their apartment was so beautifully decorated, and then the father's Barca lounger was there in the living room.
Yes.
But,
yes.
And so for this couple, you said they're in their early 70s. How did their kids and their grandkids react when they saw this?
Oh, loved it. And I think that the kids loved it, especially because this house will be left to them, in their name, in their trust. And so I think they love the idea of having something that's traditional, a family investment, but something that they probably, hopefully won't have to redo for 25 years. That's the goal.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is the beautiful dining room in this house, right?
Yes. Yeah, the formal dining room. This room was a bit of an adventure because we lacquered the walls with fine paints of Europe. And when you're doing lacquering on this level, it is quite a process. You can put your makeup on in these walls. You can shave your face in these walls. That's how mirrored the effect is. But for the contractors, they absolutely hated my guts. I had to really, crack the whip to get these walls absolutely perfect to handle this level of lacquer. And they're smooth, like a baby's bum. It's the smoothest thing you can possibly imagine. But it was a pain to do. But they did a great job. The surround on the fireplace actually was a carryover from the previous construction. And to your point, Kelly, this is an area where I did want to change out the surround. I was advocating for a piece of Calcutta, a marble, to kind of frame this fireplace. And she had very strong feelings about retaining this surround in the fireplace. It has these little painted, like these little Dutch people, pushing wheelbarrows and little things. And it wasn't my thing. It was definitely something that I was like, okay, well, you acquiesce. You say, okay, I'm going to move with this. And so actually those little figurines that are painted there drove the color palette for the room.
Yeah. And what I love about this room is all the furniture is either an antique or, a modern version of antique, but this room looks modern. It doesn't look fusty or old ladyish at all. It's really beautiful.
The chairs were dipped in white lacquer. We recovered the cushions. The two host and hostess chairs came from someplace else in the house, and we recovered them and brought them in this room. The dining room table remained as it is, but it's fun. It's about just kind of, again, repurposing. The theme of our program this year and at Nantucket is about renewal, and renewal sometimes just means giving a facelift to that which is already great, and that's what we did with this space.
Wonderful. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is how I became a fangirl. And anybody who looks at home decor magazines, you have seen these images. And I, gosh, there's so much in here that is so unexpected. You've got these beautiful columns and pilasters. You're using 1970s avocado green in the bathroom. You have fabulous artwork on the walls. But give us the background for this. How did you come to this project, and what was your remit?
So clients can be very different with regards to how they wake up. And we do a very exhaustive discovery process when talking with our clients. I ask very personal, what may seem nosy and intrusive questions, but it's really not meant to be. I just really, as a design doctor, want to get to know my patient. And some clients want to wake up first thing in the morning with a pep in their step, and they want bright vibrancy everywhere. And the first step that people take is into the bathroom usually when they wake up. Other clients, don't touch me until 12 o'clock this afternoon. I want dark, smoky, cocoonish interiors from my principal suite. For this project, the idea was to go for this bright, vibrant color. So my client, I wanted this project to kind of celebrate a pep in the step. So this bathroom has a concave library that wraps around the tub. I think that reading in the tub is fun. It's better than dropping your iPhone in the water. Better to drop a book, right? And we have this really cool kind of modernized toile wall covering my colon sun, and it's again just very bright and vibrant. And you'll see a lot in my work where I take these traditional elements, these Corinthian columns and the fluted detail, and lacquer them in some unusual color. In this case, it's like a lime green. And some folks are like, what the hell were you thinking? But I think that what makes traditionalism fresh is taking what has worked classically in the past and moving it forward. It would have been perfectly fine to have, painted the millwork here white or stained it navy. Or I'm sorry, I would have stained it navy, stained it a dark walnut color. But why not green? I'm a child from the 70s, right? And that was the big color at the time. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, it's very nostalgic, but it's not where you expect to see it. You expect to see it on the appliances in the kitchen. That's where we all saw it in the 70s. No, I absolutely love this. No surprise that this one has been Instagrammed a million times. But it's an advertisement for
DXB.
Yeah,
they used it for their DXB as well. So it was fun. All of the pieces there are from their line. We had a great relationship with them for this project in Minneapolis. So it was a lot of fun.
Fabulous. Would not have guessed it was in Minneapolis either. I know. That's great. All right, next slide. So when I saw these images, I was thinking of Nate the other day and his, what I've now termed his red dread. He doesn't like red, doesn't know how to use it, but you used it so beautifully here. And again, this is an interior. It's got a very deco feel to it. Clearly a lot of white, but did you have to convince the owner to use the red?
No, this was a project that we built from the ground up where, again, the wife wanted more color than the husband. The husband really wanted all neutral colors. And the wife, her favorite color was this crimson, ruby red. It was very important to her. I, like Nate, don't use a lot of red in my work. I do appreciate it, but it is one of those colors that can be a bit much. I had a couple that I worked with 12 years ago. Speaking about diplomacy, she also loved red, and she insisted on having the dining room painted red, like all the walls. She wanted all the furniture, all upholstery in different shades of strawberry red. And I gently kind of pushed back on that and said, that's a lot of red to put into this room. Maybe we should introduce some neutral colors, to kind of just break. No. I want nothing but red. I just want red, red, red. Designer acquiesces because it's not my house. I'm going to deliver the baby. It's going home with you. It will look like you. And so we did this dining room. It was all red. 2 months later, the husband calls me in a panic. He's like, we've been fighting every single day since we completed the project. And I said, okay. I says, so when you have these arguments, where are you guys at? He said, it's always over dinner. And I said, I have an idea. I think you guys are probably having these arguments every day over dinner because you're literally seeing red. And so red, color theory is about how colors impact the human psyche and our emotions. It's not just about picking what you like and just putting it someplace. it does impact who we are and how we behave as a species. And so red is a color that excites, it's very energetic, it's very sexy, but it has to be used judiciously or else you have a lot of fights and arguments. And so we went back and repainted that whole dining room, painted like a cream color, kept the furniture red. They're still married 12 years later. All was fine.
Very good. Wow.
Right. So with this project, the wife wanted lots of red too. And having learned from 12 years ago, it's a bit more firm about not doing red everywhere. We kept it to the runners, the red carpet, if you will, and just used it judiciously.
Well, it looks fantastic. And glad to hear that the other couple's still married.
Yes.
Anyone who's having marital problems, you might want to just repaint and see if that does the trick. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the same house, right?
Same house. Yep. This was my first spread in Architectural Digest. They did a lovely feature online with it. And again, these books look very curated. They do own all of these books. It wasn't like I got like ripped on the social media commentaries, little keyboard banners wrote all this stuff about me. Like, I hate designs that match all their books. They own these books. It just so happens that there were a lot of red ones.
No, I have to say, I don't like the designers who wrap the books in white paper.
Yeah, I've done that too. So, you know.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
But they did own all these books. But yeah, I did kind of curate it for the photo shoot a bit because they did have a collection of red because the wife loves red. We had these chairs here upholstered in this great crimson faux leather. The honeycomb chandelier, I think, is a real, statement maker. It's like sculpture kind of hanging down from the ceiling. The artwork is, I think it's called Unraveling. I have something about butterflies for brains and unraveling minds in my art and my sculpture selections. I don't know why. And then the La Canache range, again, was a big statement maker where we really pumped up the red motif. So you can do it. It just has to be done with balance. That's all.
One of the things I love about this sitting room is all the linearity, the different ways you used it on the fireplace wall, on that upholstered nook. Then the lines are going across on the fireplace. It's very subtle, but and on the books, of course, because you changed the lines.
Mm-hmm.
But you really played up the you were able to use the lines to bring the room down because the ceilings are so high.
Right.
But it also gives the room a lot of texture as well.
Yeah, cute little conversation nooks. I first did conversation nooks on my HGTV series 12 years ago, because people often wonder, what do I do with the spaces that are flanking the fireplace? What do I do with this negative space? And I like making them into little nooks, little niches that folks can curl up in and read a book or chat or have a separate conversation from everyone else. In this case, we did have a U-shaped kind of bookcase around the nooks. And then we upholstered the backs with these great channel back insets with the faux leather. This couple was very sustainably minded, so we didn't use any real leather anywhere in the project. But I think the faux leathers have come such a long way in recent years.
Yeah, no, it's great. Love an Ingle nook. That is great.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next slide. Is this the same house?
No,
different.
House.
So here's a room, 2 rooms. Really only a couple of colors, but wow, it makes a statement.
Yeah. This house was a historic home in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, near the water there, and the ceilings were very low. I think they were barely 8 feet, and so this was on a second story, and we just went for this kind of cool black and white story with a lot of geometry everywhere. But I love doing the unexpected and bringing something in that's just off the beaten path. And so in this case, we had a custom-made vanity, and we painted it this bright cobalt blue. And it's such a attention-arresting thing when you walk in the bathroom. But it was fun. And the wife called me once. She was in France, and she was staying at a really beautiful high-end hotel. I don't know if it was the Ritz, but something really high-end. And she said, for as much money as you've spent to be here this week here in Paris, My bathroom there in Michigan is actually nicer than anything I've seen here at this hotel. So that's a great compliment.
That is a great compliment. So, there was that whole phase where everybody wanted their homes to look like a hotel, but she actually had a home that was better than the hotel.
Yeah.
I love that. I love the fixtures and hardware in the other photograph. It looks like jewelry in the shower.
Yeah.
You can tell I like jewelry.
Yes.
So I was immediately drawn to that. Like a magpie, yeah.
Yeah, I love brass hardware when it's paired with neutrals. And so this shower stall is tiny. That's the thing about doing historical renovations. You can only move so far with the imprint of the house. We're already on the roof line as it is. And so the next step is outside into fresh air. So we had to stick with this very small cubicle shower space. But you can still have big personality with stone and pattern and framing it out in great brass jewelry details and still make it a little wow factor.
Love it. Let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, this goes way back. This project's 13 years old. This has been a long time.
It's aged well. I think any one of us would be happy to be in it today. What I like about this room in particular is all the different texture that you use. You've got, boucle, and you've got tweeds, and you've got leather. And so it's a monochromatic room in some ways, but it actually has so much texture that I find it very welcoming.
Thank you. Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I was doing this project while I was filming for HGTV. I wanted to make sure that we gave this couple the due diligence that they deserved, but it was hard at one point flying back and forth. And thankfully, they were so supportive of me in terms of what I was doing with my career to do this project with the filming of the series. And so it turned out lovely. This coffee table is an antique piece, and sitting on top of the table is a disc. The husband's great-great-great-grandfather was an Olympian. And so this disc was something that he used when competing. So I like taking my clients' things that perhaps have been in boxes and attics for decades, and bringing them out and making them into statement pieces, into conversation pieces. And people just love talking about the memories that come with something as simple as an Olympian sport.
Can't say I've seen a discus on a cocktail table. That may be a first.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next slide. So I love talking about this because we had a discussion about kids' rooms versus rooms for kids, and those are two different things. I don't have children, and I don't understand these people who spend a fortune on their home designed only for their children,
right? Because
it's your money, it's your home, so it should be designed for you. But children should be welcome in them. There should be places for them. So talk about how you achieve that.
Well, I try to encourage my clients to invest well in the children and their spaces, because the children will thank them for it later. My mother always decorated our rooms when we were children growing up, and she is responsible for the monster that I've become today when it comes to decoration, because I was raised in an atmosphere where no space was left ignored when it came to decoration. It doesn't take a lot either. In this case, you have two spaces here that are used for children, and it could be just a vibrant tangerine paint color. And then maybe the artwork and the furnishings you keep inexpensive, because the kids are going to probably tear it up. So maybe you don't invest too heavily in that. But in my new book, we have a chapter called Age Appropriate, and we talk about ways to make these kids' bedrooms sing without spending a fortune. And these are two spaces where we got pieces from, like, those yellow chairs. I think they're maybe $200 a pop. They're not very expensive because we know they're going to tear it up, right? But the parents don't mind investing in something that is beautifully done, because the walls, the chandelier, there's other key pieces that are a bit more high end that can graduate to a new iteration of this space once you move past this particular function as it is right now. So I think it's just about having some careful planning and thought, and then teaching the children how to take care of things, how to appreciate things. It's all about training.
Agree. Yeah, no, these are definitely rooms that can evolve very easily.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to the next slide. This is one of the most serene dining rooms I've seen. I mean, it's just beautiful. And again, very apropos for our discussion here in Nantucket because it has so many traditional elements. But you made it modern. So talk about how you achieved that.
Well, I was telling Anne about this yesterday at the garden party. This is the space in Summit, New Jersey, historic home. This house was built in 1905. And this woman found my work in a spread for a traditional home as well. And it was basically the same story, Kelly. We repurposed probably 40 something pieces of furniture for her as well, because she had read what I had done for the other couple, and it just kind of became like this chain reaction.
And her husband was probably like, yeah, that's the guy you're hiring.
Yeah,
that's the guy who's going to make you get all new stuff.
Right. Yeah. So we had these great pieces here that were already in the home. We recovered them. The host and hostess chairs are new. The rug is new. We did new wall coverings, of course, new window treatments, new lamps, and different accessories. But the artwork, they had locked away in an attic for the greater part of 25 years. She literally had forgotten that she had these pieces of art stored away. And so when it came time to start shopping for accessories, I said to her, let's shop from your home first before we go out. And she looked at me like I was crazy, like I had like two heads. And she said, you want to actually go through my things I already own before we go shopping? And I says, well, yeah. And she says, I would have expected you to be like, let's buy everything new and just get your commission. I says, well, I don't work on commission. And for one thing, I think that if you already have great pieces of art, we can actually, save a lot of footwork in terms of going to find new things. We found about 50 pieces of art that were in great condition. We did have some pieces reframed. We brought them down. And she was like, oh, you really want to use that again? It's just so old. And I'm like, let's reframe it. Let's put a new mat on it. We'll make it fresh again. And we saved thousands of dollars just bringing back the past and moving into the future. That's what renewal is all about. That's what sustainability is all about. It's just about going back to the original classes and giving them a new spin.
Yeah. I think you could do a lot of shopping in my house. I've forgotten what I even have. Let's go to the next slide. So this is a very interesting space. It's, kind of bold, to use that chocolate color, and it's got that big piece of art. How did you have the conversation with the owner about this color?
This was a bit of a challenge for them. You'll see more of the house later on in the presentation, but this is the one sitting room near the front door off the foyer that had a very tall, I think we had a 10-foot ceiling here. And I really wanted to kind of make one room in the house a bit more smoky and sexy versus all the bright cheeriness we had elsewhere in the palette. So we painted the walls as dark sepia brown. And that was, my client freaked out on me during the painting process because there's no furniture, there's nothing else to kind of juxtapose against these dark walls. So she called me and she was like, okay, have we made a mistake? This room is like a cave. And I says, don't worry, you've seen the color boards, you've seen the sketches, we're gonna, balance it out. She's like, well, should we go up a few shades of chocolate? Like go a little bit more towards, Hershey's or, versus like dark chocolate. And I says, no, just trust me. I said, if you don't love it, we can always redo it. I'll pay for the repainting, but I really think that you'll love it if we can just stick to it. And she acquiesced, and this was the front cover of Traditional Home magazine in 2017. It was Jill Wagge's first issue as the editor-in-chief, and she chose this for her front cover. And we brought in, this great bright white sofa and the lime green and the bright rug, the metallic wall-covered ceiling. The settee was an antique piece that had been passed down through the generations of her family. We reupholstered that. I think this project speaks to what happens when the designer and client really trust each other, because it is a trusting relationship. Mm-hmm. It really has to be about give and take and communication and just, believing in one another.
Yeah, I love this room. And I love that it's sort of her room, because let's go to the next slide.
Yeah. And
talk about how this room gets used.
So the husband uses this space to have his Super Bowl parties. So you have a pink sofa, which he was like, really, Corey, we're doing a pink sofa? I says real men sit on pink. And so we did this kind of clean line traditional sofa with the Chesterfield back, and then we have a remnant of the chocolate parlor with the lower half of the peplum treatments on the window treatments to kind of contrast against the pink sofa. So everything is done through color theory and placement and the study of geometry and clean lines. And so we really want to make sure that the sofa would have a chance to kind of pop and not be washed out against the green walls or against the windows behind it. A fun floral fabric on the two bergères. It's kind of fun seeing big burly men with hot dogs and hamburgers watching the game. That piece of art was put up for the photo shoot as somewhere else in the project, but in real life, day to day, it's a big television screen there, which is always the death knell of a space for me as a designer. But again, you acquiesce and let them, do it. But for the photo shoot, we took it down.
Love it. I think you incorporated both of them beautifully in this project.
It was a lot of fun.
So let's go to the next slide.
Okay.
So all I'm going to say about this photo or these series of photos is a gentle word opens an iron gate.
Yes.
And then I'm going to let you tell everybody the story. And so I told you we started in the middle. This is the beginning.
Yeah, this is the beginning. This is my very first project. And my client, whose name was Anne, gave me this big break. So the way how I launched my firm, I started my company in 2009 during the Great Recession. And prior to that, I had a very great high salary position as a purchasing agent or a buyer for the big three in Metro Detroit. We make cars for planet Earth. And so when the recession hit, our state took a really, we really nosedived with our business, because we're pretty much a one-note city. We only make cars. And so I survived 11 rounds of layoffs at my company. I did not survive the 12th, and I lost my job. And so I fell into a very, very deep depression because at 31 years of age, I really didn't see myself having to start over. I had been raised to believe that you work at one company for 25, 30 years and you retire and you get a pension and you just work on the line, whatever the case might be. And my dad was vehemently against me doing interior design. I would have started this career back in 1996 when I first really started to pursue and study interior design. But my dad put a kibosh on that. He would not fund the program. He would not let me pursue that. He said, I want you to be a businessman. I want you to focus your studies on finance. He's a banker. My mom's a banker. Both of my brothers are bankers. I come from a finance family. I'm the only creative. And so when you are in your 20s and you can't really financially maintain yourself that long in an expensive city like New York City, eventually you come back home to the nest. And my dad was like, get a real job. Right? And so that's what I did. And that's how I got into working for the automotive industry. So when I lost my job, I was devastated, mostly because my income had been cut off. I was living high on the hog. I had this great condo, the big emerald green Volvo sedan. I thought I was something, And now these bills are still coming in. I have no income to cover them because everyone's out of work. Hundreds of thousands of degreed, experienced professionals are all on the unemployment line getting the same unemployment checks. And so I just laid in bed for a few weeks and didn't even move. That's how depressed I was. I didn't even get out of bed. And so eventually I realized that the unemployment checks were only going to go for so long. They're going to run out. And so I need to, get off my butt and get a job somewhere. I applied for dozens and dozens of jobs in the automotive, sector, if you will. And of course, it was the employer's market. So you have 25, 30, 50 people applying for one position, right? And so I couldn't get in anywhere. So I said, okay, well, that's not working. What if I start maybe focusing on interior design? My dad was like, no, you need to stick to the goal and stick to finance. I'm like, okay, I listened to you the first time in 1996. I'm going to try this my own way this time. So I got a job working at Robert Allen Kelly as a stock boy. And my manager, the great Patty Mocha, sorry. I got it. Okay, I'm good. This always conjures emotion for me because I wouldn't be doing this if it hadn't been for people giving me a shot. So Patty Moulton got my resume and she's like, you are way overqualified for this position. You're going to be taking out the trash. You're going to be wiping down mirrors and wrapping up furniture for some very haughty interior designers and putting the artwork in their cars. Are you sure you want to do this? And I said, I want to work. I don't want to continue collecting these unemployment checks. So I really want to get back into the workforce. She said, well, you'll have to wear a smock. And I was like, oh God. They gave me 5 chocolate Egyptian cotton smocks with the Robert Allen logo, and me with my fashion oriented self put a chocolate leather blazer over it every single day, moving furniture around, sweating like a pig. And I didn't want to wear just the smock. I had to wear loafers and, fitted khakis with this smock and my leather jacket. So I did that for 3 months, taking out the trash. There was a slop bucket in the back room because we didn't have any plumbing in the break room. So everyone had to pour their refuse of their, coffee or whatever into this pail of fluid. And there was always bugs and maggots and things growing in this thing. And I had the inestimable privilege of pouring this out every single day. Designers were very condescending. Young man, come get this artwork down for me. Young man, come get this. And can I get this memo sample, please? And I'm dutifully, getting the samples and, I'm doing the job. And then I lost that job after 3 months. They let go of myself and another woman and then laid off half of that staff. So now it's 2008. And so now the economy is really, falling apart. And so I got put out again to pasture. And so I said, okay, so I've now lost 2 jobs for the first time in my life in the span of 11 months. What am I going to do? And so I said, I'm going to start my own interior design company, which was unorthodox, Kelly, I think at the time, because again, we're in a recession and Michiganders are not flashy people. They're a very humble, down-to-earth species of human that don't really believe in showing off. And so to launch a career focused on excess and luxury was not really well received, I think, at the time, because even those who were wealthy didn't want to show off their wealth to even their friends because their friends were struggling, right? So I said, how am I going to get some clients? So I went and got an enterprise account and started renting a car. I had given up my green Volvo. And I got a rusty Honda that was white with orange accoutrements, if you know what I mean, rust. And I had moved from my lovely townhouse in Rochester to the hood because I wanted to live within my means because I was living on this unemployment check thing. So I went to enterprise and started renting a car. And I said, okay, this is my circumstances. I need to rent the same car from you every single time I come to you. So I have an idea. And the management there was like, that's perfectly fine. We understand. We'll support you. So they gave me a Chrysler 200 because you dare not drive a Honda in Metro Detroit because we make GM, Chrysler, and Ford cars. And I started mapping out the nicest neighborhoods in Bloomfield Hills and Rochester Hills and Grosse Pointe. And I went door to door. For months, I knocked on 779 doors in the dead of winter. I had a satchel with color boards and sketches. And I said, my name is Corey Damen Jenkins. I'm an interior decorator. Are you in need of interior design services today? That was my spiel. And obviously 778 rejections. Doors were slammed in my face. People cussed me out. On 2 occasions, people let their dogs out to chase me off the property. Got my calories in on that one. And then I said to myself, okay, I had a goal of 1,000 doors. Clearly, I'm not having success. It's the dead of winter. I'll round my goal down to 800 doors. And if I don't get a hit by 800 doors, then I'll just hang it up and get a job at Starbucks because at least they have benefits, And on the 779th door, this lovely woman named Anne gave me my first job. And so she invited me in, she and her husband. Her husband was an anesthesiologist, the most important people. They bring you back from the dead. And they said, okay, show us your portfolio. I had just a few sketches of my work that I had drawn. And they said, okay, if you can make this happen in our house, we'll give you a chance. So I put my heart and soul. We did a complete gut renovation of this house. I brought my own contractors, got it professionally photographed. To your point, Kelly, this was not what I wanted to do for this couple. I wanted to do more of a Tuscan old world theme because that was the hot thing at the time, was Tuscany. Everything was Tuscany at the time in 2009 and 10. She wanted French Provincial beach. They were from Boston. They want that kind of Cape Cod feel. I was just happy to have a job. So I said, I'll do what you want. And after I got it professionally photographed, I put it on my GoDaddy.com website that I designed myself. And then 2 weeks later, HGTV called to cast me in my first television show. So, thank you. So I tell my students, I mentor, I say to them, you know, the lovely accolades, you know, the 8100 and masterclass and all the beautiful things I've been blessed with. That's lovely, but the doors don't open until you knock on them. And so when you're talking about renewal, we have to sometimes make it happen for ourselves. Whether we are a wife who's raised her children and she wants to get back into the workforce or launch a new career, or as a man who's lost his job and needs to get back out there to figure out what he's going to do to provide for his family, or if you're a child in school, figuring out how do I navigate this pandemic wearing a mask, or kids leaving college, whatever it is, the doors don't open until you knock on them. And if there isn't a door, find a damn window. That's the moral of the story.
I couldn't agree more. And as you say, I mean, that is the ultimate story of renewal that we've just heard. I mean, extraordinary. And I know we have a bunch more slides, but I feel like we should stop here because it's so great. I do want to go, maybe we can go through to the very last slide right there.
Yeah.
Guest room.
Yeah.
I did want to talk about this because we're in Nantucket.
Right.
So this is an extraordinary guest room and anyone would want to stay here. And the problem is we have in Nantucket is people want to stay too long. So you made this beautiful, but what did the owner tell you about this?
Well, their whole thing was entertaining and really showing off a nice time to their guests when they came through. And she had bought 2 of those chairs you see in the lower right corner, and they were the wrong shade of green. And so I had to make them work. And so we used that more Kelly green to kind of splash out the space with the stripes and the patterns. And they said, we really want our guests to feel welcome. That they really feel like we put some thought and time into their stay. And so I really think it's important that to the extent that your budget will allow, show off for your guests. Be a great host and hostess and give them a great guest room for them to stay in.
But then on the flip side, share the story about the gentleman who talked to you about how to upholster the dining chairs.
Upholster the dining chairs.
Didn't he tell you to make them a little stiff?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so sometimes not everyone likes to entertain, and so we had a situation where one of the spouses wanted to make the dining room a little less hospitable for visitors. And so he was like, I really want you to make these cushions very firm so that people don't stay that long when we have them over for dinner. And I was like, what? And he says, I really want you to just make the cushions like really hard, like concrete. I said, do you want like concrete? Do you want like actual like marble slab put on each chair? You know, he says, no, but just make it really uncomfortable. And so, and I did it. We made the chairs super firm, really firm, and people would not stay very long. And the wife was like, no one ever stays. And so I had made the host and hostess chair very soft and cushy because that's where they were sitting. That's where he sat. But the side chairs were like a little less hospitable. So one day she was doing some work there at the table, and she sat down at the table at one of the side chairs. And she was like, "Oh my God, why is this so uncomfortable? I had no idea these were so firm." So I got a phone call back from him. He says, "We're changing the chairs, make them more cushy."
I love that story. Just love that story. All right, let's go to the next slide. This again, beautiful jewel tones. One thing I noticed as I was looking at these images is you have the statue of St. Francis against the wallpaper with all the animals in it. I just loved that because he's so associated with animals, but just a beautiful, beautiful room. And then one more ahead. There we are. Yeah. So this is our landing for the end of our discussion. And it's also the cover of your book.
Yeah.
So maybe talk about why this was chosen for the cover.
So this was a historic home that Mario Bawada had worked on in the 1990s. And the woodwork was very different before I got to it. I convinced the couple to lacquer it in this dark navy blue and to throw up these coal and sun clouds, wallpaper on the ceiling to kind of give the room some visual movement. And when you're doing a book, it's a collaborative process. You have to be very humble and really check your ego at the door, because the editors, the marketing department, everyone has their opinions about what will make the book sell, what will make the book move. And so there were several different options. I would have loved for my Kips Bay Ladies Library to have made the front cover. That was the one that I was rooting for, but it was just too busy. That ceiling came back to bite me in the butt because it was too busy for the verbiage to kind of layer over the top of it. So it got the back cover instead. But this was basically a choice by the publisher, Charles Meyer. He said, "I really think this is going to move." And so it ended up being the front cover. And I think it really speaks, Kelly, to what I love to do, taking traditional and giving it that fresh, vibrant, colorful, pattern-heavy twist, but not to the point where it's, offensive or insulting, but still, I hope 25, 30 years, 50 years from now is considered to be a new classic, just as we revere what's been done before by previous designers and greats like Mario Bawada, who, like I said, he had his own opinions about my project, but he was positive.
Yes, no, I know. No surprise. Well, I think it's a safe bet to say that you are definitely a new classic. The detail, we were joking about Mario Bawada because, as you notice in Corey's draperies in particular, how tailored they are and how he uses passementerie. And so, as you know, Mario Bawada was referred to as the Prince of Chintz. Corey would like to be known as the Prince of Passementerie. So let's try to make that a thing. Let's try to get that started. But I think this is a perfect room because it encompasses so much of your brilliance and so much of your warmth and so much of your authenticity. And so we're so grateful to have you here today. You have been spectacular.
Thank you.
And I told him I was going to do my best Oprah today and try to get him to cry, and who knew? I got him to do it.
She got it too, man.
I want to give our audience a chance to ask you a couple questions before we wrap up.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Corey, do you have can I take this off? Sure. Corey, how many patterns do you have a rule of thumb for how many patterns you can place in a room?
I don't. It depends upon the scale of the room, how large is it, and then geometrically, what are the lines saying? You don't want to have vertigo. You don't want to induce vertigo. So there is a limit, but it's really about, following your gut. What is too much? What is too little? You will rarely see me upholster a large piece of real estate in a room with a busy pattern, like a sofa or something really big like that. In most of my work, I really restrict the pattern play to a few different places, primarily the rugs, pillows, and maybe window treatments and the ceiling. I try to keep the big pieces, the chunky pieces solid because the eye needs a break. You can't overdo it because then it becomes like gaudy and overdone.
And I love your work because the ceiling is the most important wall.
Yeah.
And you really capture that. And that's a unique talent to pair the right color with everything.
Yeah.
I think you kind of have to trial and error with that. You really have to get that in the room.
Yeah. And it takes a lot of faith on the client's part to let me do that sometimes because they can't always visualize how a small swatch of paper will play out on a large expanse like a ceiling. But that's why we do sketches and renderings and proposals and show them in advance what they're doing. I'm not one of those designer divas that's like, just trust me and get out of here and I'll show you later. I like my clients to be fully informed and educated on their decision-making process early on. That way there's no surprises.
Corey, I love your stuff. I love the juxtaposition of the totally unique and wild colors and textures, but it's all balanced with what you were talking about, that the sense of proportion and mathematical carefulness that you're bringing into it. So it's like there's something about it that is very balanced, even though it's so wild. And I was wondering what you would recommend as a resource for us to read about that mathematical proportion that you're so good at.
Thank you. So I won't be like a heavy sales pitch here, but my new book has several takeaway sections in every chapter that literally lists my approach to scale and pattern play. On August 26th, have any of you all heard of Masterclass, the online series? I've been chosen as an instructor. Kelly Wersler was the first to do it, and Frank Gehry, the great architect icon, and now I'm the third design instructor. And the Masterclass is actually based on my book, which I was very honored that the executive producers were willing to base the entire curriculum on those takeaways. So I talk about it in print in the book, and I actually act it out live on the Masterclass. So you'll see it like a 4-hour course. I'll be online on August 26th.
Great. We could take maybe one more question. Gary? Oh, Roseanne, go ahead. No, go ahead.
We'll do both.
I want to say to you mainly that you have an amazing heart.
Oh, thank you.
And that's what comes through for me. I think you're very talented, and hopefully a lot of us have talent, but I could see how clients love you because you're real. And I think it's a very important thing for our industry to see that, because that's part of what is a problem in our industry. Real isn't what we are, not everyone is striving for. So that you can make me cry is amazing. And I think you're wonderful.
Agree. Well said. Gary?
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacey. Corey, you very often hang paintings or artwork on bookcases. It's something I've never had any success with. Are there any rules as far as that's concerned?
So I like hanging artwork on bookcases because I don't think that just because the wall has books, they should be ignored as a location for art. It helps out clients, especially my younger clients who don't have large book collections yet. So a lot of times behind those pieces of artwork is nothing. It's actually, it's a space filler until they, collect more books. But it's very easy to do. All you have to do is, if you have a piece of art, you always put a wire across the back. You raise the wire up towards the top of the piece of art, and then you put a nail or a hook into the front of the shelf, and you just run the wire behind the hook, and then it comes down. Now, here's the rub. If you don't have books or something below it or another shelf, the piece of art will cave into the open space below. It's just the way how gravity works. So you do want to have something, a box or something else if you don't have books, behind that piece of art so that it can rest against it, or have it scaled down to hit the shelf that's below. But it's a fun way of just kind of breaking up all the monotony of books. I enjoy it.
Hi, I love your combination of color and palette, and I was wondering, do you find that inspiration in the client's own inventory of things, or are you looking at fabrics, or where do you find your inspiration for your palette and color combinations?
That's a great question. Thank you. I look at my clients' wardrobes a lot. We get very personal with our clients. I always will say, take me into your wardrobe. The house from Summit, the client there, she's a very influential financial executive. And
That's a page from his book.
Yes, yeah.
And you can see these are clothing items that
style cues, right? So she had a dress that was very colorful, and it was the only one like it. And everything else was beige and gray and black. And so I said to her, when you wear this dress, and I was telling this to you yesterday, Anne, when you wear this dress, how do you feel? And she said, I feel like $1 million when I wear this dress on very distinct occasions. And so I said, and that's going to be the touchstone for our new interior. That's going to be what we use to do the whole space. So I look at that. I look at the fashion runway, and I also look at the works of historic civilizations that have used jewel tones, like the Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, the Romans, the Medo-Persians, the Babylonians. I look at how they dressed themselves, how they used architecture. Back then, jewel tones were huge because it's really what they had access to, and they denoted royalty. Amethyst and sapphire blue and the emerald green. Those things meant denoted royalty. So you'll see a lot of that in my work, because I think that persimmon may come and go, or tangerine orange or beige and gray, but jewel tones, our planet is a jewel tone, and so I think it'll always be in one way or another vogue.
Stacy, did you have a question?
Corey, is there a specific or type of project you haven't done that you'd love to do?
That's a great question. I would love to do a yacht. I would love to do a yacht. Yeah, I would love to do that. It is a whole study process to do a yacht, because you do want to make sure you're within code. But I'm waiting for that phone call to do a yacht.
All right, we'll put the word out.
Yeah.
Well.
Huh? I know.
Yeah, lots of them here. Why don't you go knock on some?
I'll knock on some doors. I can make that happen. I actually am well built for that. So,
well, please join me again in thanking Corey Damen Jenkins for this amazing discussion. What a treat! And so I did spin through some of the pages, the slides, because the good news is those are in his book. So his book's outside. And you're also going to be signing at Ellis Van Breem's, which is a fabulous shop, the proprietor of which is right here in the back of the room. So there'll be a book signing, and Steele will be there too. Steele Marcoux will be there.
Yay.
Wonderful. We will be there. So don't forget, Poppy Caravan's still going on. The Antique Show is still going on. Go online and watch Alexa Hampton and Ari Kopelman, their video for the Antique Show. It's fantastic. It's a great fun. I want to thank everybody for your time and your attention and your support of the Nantucket Historical Association. I want to thank our designers. I want to thank our sponsors. Everybody makes such an effort to get here, and we all know how hard it is to find a room on Nantucket. So thank you for that. I want to particularly thank Johanna Richard and Stacy Stewart, Mary and Elle Novissimo, our stalwarts, the whole NHA staff for all that you do. And I particularly want to thank Olivia thank you. Thank you. And with that, I want to thank Olivia Charney and Stacy Bucas for being our co-chairs next year. So same time, same place next year. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.